I have a koan this morning, but I just get this over here. Okay. So this morning the wild fox is back. He hasn't been here for a while, but there he is. And I've asked the wild fox to read you a koan. So it's the 11th case from the Blue Cliff record. Wang Po's Gobblers of Dregs. Wang Po, instructing the community, said, "All of you people are gobblers of dregs. If you go on traveling around this way, where will you have today? Do you know that there are no teachers of Chan in all of China?" At that time, a monk came forward and said, "Then what about those in various places who order fellows and lead communities?" Wampo said, "I do not say there is no Chan. It's just that there are no teachers." Don't take it off. It's hot. Must be foxes must get awfully hot. So what is Wampo talking about? Well, he's responding to a specific phenomena that was going on in China at that time, which was that the monks were referred to as Chan travelers. And as you know, uh, Chan is the Chinese word that the Japanese transliterated as Zen. So, same thing, different culture. But these Chan travelers wandered about, attracted by the reputations of the various teachers. And if a particular teacher gave a particularly exciting Dharma talk or whatever, Chan travelers flocked to their temple, hoping to hear the magic words, hoping that that teacher would enlighten them, would bring them to realization. And so that's what Wang Po is responding to here. He's trying to remind the monks or teach the monks that it's not the teacher. It is the student that's important in the process of realization. You're the ones who bring the effort, who do the heavy lifting, who have the practice. And there's nothing magical in what I or any other teacher says that's going to create a shortcut or, you know, sometimes there are miraculous openings, if you want to call them that. And as we look back but one very famous one is the sound of a pebble striking bamboo. So sometimes awakenings can be triggered when the person is fully ripe and ready, and it only takes some momentary experience to sort of crack their shell. And these teachers of old, I think they had a really good sense of that. And so they just knew the right moment to whack you on the skull if you were sufficiently ripe. And sometimes a whack on the skull is just a whack on the skull, and sometimes a whack on the skull is a moment of realization. And maybe they just whacked them every time, and coincidentally, once in a while it works. But again, what one poem is pointing at is it's just practice, practice, practice. So we do the same thing today, but we do it with books, right? People don't tend to travel necessarily around to a lot of different practice centers or monasteries or temples, whatever. But it's I often hear it in terms of books. I just got this book and it's going to be wonderful. And I'm not disparaging books here, though it may sound that way, or any authors on Zen or any other topic. And can they help? Perhaps. But that's like chasing the teachers around the countryside looking, maybe this book, maybe this book, maybe if I read Norman Fisher, maybe if I happened to read Norman this morning, so he's on my mind. But that teacher, they're going to say the magic words that are going to guide me to enlightenment. And Wampo is saying there are no magic words. There are no teachers, in his words. Not because there are not people, I don't know how they put it, leading sanghas and giving talks, etc., but because at the end of the day, the only real teacher is you yourself through your practice. So what the heck am I doing up here? Good question. One I ask myself often. I think in many ways, teacher is a misnomer, and I'm going to come back to that a little further. But what I see myself a little more like is as a trail guide. I've been on the trail, I've walked the trail. I know some of the places you can get lost. I know some of the places that you can have magnificent views. And so I'm kind of hopefully making suggestions along the way. And if you get off the trail, which is easy to do, then I hope I can say, yeah, look, the trail is over here. Just take 3 steps to the left and you'll be back on it. But you're doing the walking. I'm not carrying you up the trail. Good luck. I'm in the process of giving away my backpacking boots. I have some really, really good backpacking boots, but I can't backpack anymore. My back will not take the strain of the pack. I can walk, but I can't carry a load. Okay, so if you're relying on me to carry you up the trail, it ain't going to happen. You got to do it. It comes through your effort. In my search this morning for that koan, I mean, I knew the koan, but I didn't have the reference. I came across, I don't know if it's AI or where these come from, but these questions pop up online. So one of the questions are wonderful. They just equal or exceed the stupidity of the questions that the monks ask in the koans. So this morning, the one that popped out is the top of the list: is Zen the true way? Now I mean, in one sense, that's an absurd question. And in another sense, it's kind of a question that a lot of people ask in that form or another form, right? They're seeking the true way. Well, the answer to that question is yes, no, maybe. But let's start with, is there a true way? And the answer to that is no. And yes, there is your true way. That's why I brought my fox with me this morning. Because my job is not to be the wild fox. The wild fox, my job is to be Peter Wohl, the best, most authentic Peter Wohl that I can be. And to bring that as best I can to you folks on Sundays. And your job is to be the best you that you can be. Who are you? What masks are you wearing? You know, there's a wonderful story in Nine-Headed Dragon River, and part of that, what goes on in that book, is that Bernie Glassman and Peter Matheson and I forget another person or two take a trip to Japan to meet some of the elder statesmen of our lineage, as it were. And one of the teachers, I read this book 40 years ago, so I can't provide specifics. I can't even provide what I had for breakfast today. So, but that said, the teacher appears on the balcony and he's wearing a mask, or maybe even a series of masks, and then he starts taking the masks off. What's he doing? He's pointing to what Zen is really all about, taking off the masks, the pretenses, the aspirations. All of those things are delusional. And the only thing we need to be is who we are. In our fundamental, authentic nature. Way back when I was a beginning Zen student, and I was a student at Zen Mountain, as some of you know. And I would look at the monks there, and I would look at Daido, he was sensei then, Daido sensei, and I would think, oh my God, I had this fear. Well, if I keep practicing, I'm going to become like them. And they were very different from me in many aspects that I'll come back to later sometime this morning. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to cease being me. I'm going to be a kind of Zen robot. Good morning, like that. Well, that never happened. In fact, quite the opposite. Today, I feel more perhaps authentically me than ever. Just me, just this. That's what we're looking. We're not going to become something special. We're not going to become something wonderful. We're not going to become somebody different. And yet we will be different in every way. Because we'll be removing all the masks. We'll be removing the agendas. We'll be removing the social pressures, lots of things that are constantly transforming who we are. So is Zen the true way? Love that question. It is a way in which you can find your true self. It is a way in which you can find a way to live more with more authenticity. It is a way in which you can leave behind pretenses and in which you can allow your compassion and loving kindness to manifest. So it's not it's not even a question that I think Zen can, there are religions that believe they are the true way, which is frightening. To me, it's terrifying because that's one of the forces that's destroying our world right now, is that there are entire religious cultures to believe that they are the true way, because once you have the true way, then you also have the false way, right? That once you create that dichotomy, there it is. We are right, you are wrong. That's the root of many of the pernicious divisions that we're experiencing in the world right now, that there are some people who believe that they have the true way, not just religion, but in politics, in life. And in Zen, we come from a different place. We come from the place of uncertainty, of not knowing, of being just this, of being ordinary. So back to this question about Zen teachers that Wohl puts out there. And he says, I do not say there is no Chan. I say that are no teachers of Chan. And I love that. And now I'm sort of going to get a little bit personal here. I think that as a Zen teacher, one should always have imposter syndrome. And I know my teachers, Steph and Margaret, did. And I was just reading Norman Fisher this morning, and Norman Fisher has it. And yet he's certainly recognized as a great teacher in the San Francisco lineage. Because certainly in one sense, we're never adequate to the task, which is a little different from what Wampo is saying, but it's also related. We may try, we may utter some words, we may, give talks and dice on and all that, but we're just never adequate to the task. And so you all have to pick it up and do the heavy lifting. So I think that sort of, the idea that one can teach the Dharma, the idea that one has the Dharma to teach is such a great pretension that I think that having imposter syndrome is normally normal and healthy. I tried to put those in one word. Normally. That's the fusion of normal and healthy. Anyway, so I have always been uncomfortable with being a Zen teacher for the reasons that I just outlined. But it's worse than that. That was the starting place. But the fact is that the longer that I'm alive, and hopefully the more comfortably and authentically me that I become, the less comfortable I am with the label and trappings of a Zen teacher. That's a role, that's a part. It's a preformed identity that I find myself moving away from more and more as time goes on. In fact, I'll go beyond that. I don't want to be a Zen teacher anymore. I'm not gonna. You can't make me. I just want to be Peter. And if you think I have something worthwhile to say, come and listen. And if you don't think I have anything worthwhile to say, don't come and listen. But in all seriousness, I don't want to use that label anymore. I don't want to be a Zen teacher. Now, how's that going to play out? Differently, you may say, well, Peter, are you still going to give Daishan? Yeah, I'm going to still give Daishan. Peter, are you still going to give Dharma talks? Yeah, I'm going to still give Dharma talks. Peter, are we still going to have a retreat? Yeah, we're still going to have a retreat. So what's going to be different? I'm not going to be a Zen teacher. Which is I pretty well accomplished anyway. You know, if you go online and you look at pictures of Zen teachers, they don't look like me. Well, there are exceptions, but for the most part, they're extraordinarily neat. They've got their layered garments, their juban, and there's, which is the Japanese underwear, and then they've got their kimono, and then they've got, various layers. They're very neat, perfectly um, ironed, no creases. They've got raksus. Many of them have no hair. I have no hair also, but for a different reason. So I don't even look like a Zen teacher. So I figure this is it. I'm going to make a formal declaration that I am not. I do not say there is no Chan. I just say that there are no teachers of Chan. Thank you.
Your trail guide, Peter. Years ago, I heard an analogy that a teacher is someone finding his or her way up the mountain, stumbling every now and then, still struggling along. The student is behind, maybe some distance behind, maybe closer. The student gets off the trail, gets lost, sits down, weeps. The teacher looks back and sees, comes back and sits with the student for a while. And then the teacher gets up and begins to make his or her way along. And the student stands up and keeps going behind the teacher. Trail guide, teacher, not a lot of difference. So maybe you can be our trail guide.
Yeah, well, I actually have, thank you, Margaret. I have a business card that I made for my stuff that I do, and it says that I am an eco-spiritual guide and teacher. So kind of headed in that. Guide is a nice word.
I remember in high school, the English teacher was talking about personas, you know, um, And she explained that she had the persona of a teacher, but she wasn't really a teacher. That was just a persona. So, I guess, that's equivalent to what you are saying. You want to drop the persona, the sort of image, superficial image of the Zen teacher, because that's associated with all the creases and the no creases or whatever. Yeah, no creases, having creases, perfect creases in your rows and everything. And that makes sense. Then I'm glad you're still going to do Dharma talks and give Daishan and retreats.
Well, we all have, personas. That's a word I should have used. And we all have multiple. That English teacher, she had her teacher persona, and she may have had a wife persona and a mother persona, and on and on with each role in her life that she was expected to adopt. And that with each of those, certain ways of thinking, acting, behaving are required, expected, right? With some overlap, and so that's again, I think that's a big part of the process of our practice, is either relinquishing those personas completely, or at least seeing them for what they are and not clinging to them.
I'm not sure how to um, encapsulate this, but there seems to be something about play that's rich. So, in various traditions, or I'm thinking of the Japanese plays, again, speaking very loosely, where you can embrace the various structures, um, poke fun, enjoy. Um, Somehow, what's coming back to me is, for instance, the physician persona that I got to be in, that could become a vehicle for. So play acting can be joyful. I don't think that the persona structures are completely meaningless, useless, if held lightly, because they are organizational principles for people's interactions. I don't know if that. So the koan about getting off the chair. You know, he's going to give the great speech, and then he just gets down from the chair. There's a chair to get down from. So that it's not that there's nothing or oblivion. It's that there are structures that we work within, and then we can um, play with. They're symbols. So I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but somehow it seems important because we are an organizing species among all the organizing species.
Two things pop up for me about that. First of all, if we think back to our lives pre-persona, and we all had a life pre-persona, we were children. What do children do? They play. You don't have to ask a child to engage in life. They're right in there, right? If they haven't been sort of too oppressed yet. And So to a certain extent, that's part of our authentic nature that gets pressed out of us because then we start getting the personas, right? You must be a student. You must be a doctor. You must be on and on and on that are shaping us. Now, that said, there's also skillful means. You know, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that there are probably studies that substantiate this. But for example, the persona of a physician helps heal. Just because they come in the room with the white coat on and say, "Hi, I'm Doctor," so, and it conditions people to receive the information in a certain way and be affected by it in a certain way, right? Same thing, therapists, whatever. I mean, if Robert showed up in a clown costume, "Hi, I'm Robert," he probably wouldn't do very well with his clients, right? So there's skillful means that we are constantly adopting. But I think part of the distinction is coming to understand that it is a skillful means, it is not who we are.
Absolutely, that really makes sense. And also that if you are in the process of aspiring to skillful means and in a persona role, there is pain because it's not really you. It's a willingness to so which is what you're talking about with being the Zen teacher. Yeah.
Wasn't it in here in one of the sagas where you mentioned a koan where a senior practitioner, a teacher perhaps, said, "Here I thought when I began all of this, I would have great wisdom and impart great knowledge and to others and influence them, and I don't know how I wound up so stupid." And
Yeah, well,
it really
yes.
affected me. I think that was an incredible koan, and I thought, boy, what a thing to say. What a hill to go over and learn. And I also when I was taking classes and forever, and I was really intrigued by the content, intrigued by who the person was equally, and sometimes more so than the content of the course. The content was not, I didn't discard the content. I got very bored with the fact that how it might be delivered. That's one thing. But also, I wanted to know the substance of the person in back of the words. And it meant a lot to me. And it didn't have to, and I really didn't care. I didn't want it to be the content of the course. I didn't want their whole identity to be the Revolutionary War or whatever. I wanted, just by the intonation, the movement, the body of the movement, the gestures and so forth, who the person was. And I felt like I was learning as much from that as I was from the content. Anyway.
Thank you, Cal. Yeah, the thing you're referring to is Chow Cho, and you know, you know, something to that effect of what he said, and who thought I would end up a fool or something was the punchline. But as the Dharma takes more and more and more away from us, what's left? I love, one of my favorite koans has always been Dongshan carries his bowls. And you may remember that in that koan, Dongshan, who at that time, also Tozan, different translate, but anyway, he's in his 80s at that time. And he comes down to dinner or whatever meal it is with his bowls, and he's early. And Seppo, who's the Tenzo, a young man at that time, thinks he's defeating him in Dharma combat because he's, oh man, the bell hasn't rung yet, you know. And so what does Tozan do, or Dongshan? He just turns around, goes back to his room. He's not defeated. He's not even in the game. He's walking around with his bowls, you know. And he's just him. He's just him. It's a beautiful koan. He doesn't react. He doesn't get angry. He doesn't whack Seppo on the head, which many of the teachers of that era would have done. He just goes back to his room.
But he had been an arrogant young man
Yes.
in his youth. And this is the change that's fabulous.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And we meet him in about 4 different koans at different stages of his life, and we can see that progression of change. I'm sort of the arrogant, you know, well, he was the Diamond Sutra king in his, wasn't his youth, but as a young man. The Diamond Sutra king, and he would take on anybody in a debate about the Diamond Sutra and defeat them. And so, yes, it's all the more striking that he becomes this very simple old man.
I just have to say, when you guys talk about that, it's almost heartbreaking to be aware of how many people develop the exquisite skill set of Diamond Sutra combat analogs, and then spend the rest of their lives trying to hold on to that, hold on to that, hold on to that. Huge effort expended to persist in an identity and a functionality that is not just this. It's really interesting, and I certainly have my own personal experience of separating from and you know, settling into changing personas, um, you know, not being Dr. Hofford, et cetera, et cetera. And it's so important. It's so um, vitality inducing, vital to just be with just who you are. Just that simple.
We expend a lot of energy trying to be other than who we are, which is a futile effort. But thinking about what you're saying, you know, there are many things wrong in the world today, which I won't even start to enumerate. But one of the really central ones is rich, powerful old white men refusing to age, to face death, you know, to kind of slip into the old man role, and they want to be the all-powerful demigod, and they are destroying the world in the process, you know. And will they achieve immortality? No, they will not. but that's what that's what's going on with a lot of these guys. It's a lot of what's going on with Trump. Look at the man. He's the portrait of Dorian Gray. He's crumbling before our very eyes, and he's fighting, this battle of autocracy, of control, of dominance to prove that he isn't. It's a very sad thing. The billionaires, right? How many these guys have? How many billions of dollars do they have? And they don't have enough? Because it's not about money, it's about ego and immortality. It's about defeating aging and the realities of life. And they can't. They never will. But they're willing to destroy entire nations in the effort. But I digress. Okay, are we done?
No, I just want to say, Peter, I feel like we should have a party for you or something. There should be a celebratory event because I feel like you found the door out, right? Which is like, and I don't know, what I know about Zen and Buddhism what I don't know could fill a library. But like, there's you get your Raksu, then you do like Tokudo, and then you get your head shaved, and then you become a full priest, whatever that ceremony's called. And like, I don't think there is a formal ceremony for when you discover that you're no longer a Zen teacher. I doubt that one's written down anywhere, but you've attained it. So congratulations.
Well, in the final ceremony, they shovel dirt on you. It's really quite a.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. We'll put that one off for a little bit, but yeah.
But thank you for that. Okay, yeah, good.